You guys were nice enough to ask 4 questions, and well, the last Q&A, I only had 2 and I made a video about it, so I guess 4 is enough. Here we go, Q&A number 2. Let's do this. Hey everybody, it's Pat and welcome back to another video. If you're new around here, I make all kinds of videos around creating music, so if that's something you're into, you might want to click the subscribe button. Once you've done that, you can click the bell to get notified every single time I upload. So Rev Redbeard asks, hey Pat, do you happen to have a podcast? LOL. Yes, I have a podcast, thank you, I'll link it somewhere. And he's joking here because in the last Q&A video, one of the 2 questions was one of my best friends asking if I can make more podcast episodes. So yes, I have a podcast, it'll be linked everywhere. Here's the meat of the actual question he was asking me. Worst gig ever, best challenges you overcame at a gig, like a broken string or amp, or a member not showing. Thanks, keep doing what you're doing. Thank you for asking questions and for telling me that I should keep doing what I'm doing. So there are many worst gigs that come to mind, but one of them was about 10 years ago. We played probably like an hour north of here, and it was for a charity, and I think there were like 2 opening bands, and we were supposed to headline. But we were actually in this sort of feud with one of the opening bands, so to sort of spite us, they ended up playing well over an hour. So we ended up playing, I think, at like midnight or something on a Thursday night. So there was no one left at that point, and my voice was gone by that point because I'd spend the whole evening just shooting the shit and all that. And yeah, it was a pretty terrible gig. We ended up playing half the gig, stopped at some point, and that was just it. That was a pretty terrible gig, probably the worst. In terms of challenges, nobody's ever not shown up to a gig, that's for sure, but I had people not show up to sound checks, and that was really a pain in the ass. Like when somebody's not there for sound check, you can't really check for them because, I have to do my own things. But otherwise, it's kind of stupid, but one of my biggest challenges early on when I started playing shows was burping. That's so fucking stupid. Basically, I would drink beer. I used to be a drummer before I was a singer and a guitarist, and you can just drink beer and play drums and whatever. But like one of my first shows as a singer and guitarist, I had a beer and I drank beer between songs and whatever, and like halfway during the set, I started sort of wanting to burp. And I would sing all the time, and then I'd have to, between lines, go like, and eventually I just stopped drinking beer altogether during shows and just left that for after the show. Yeah, it's kind of dumb, but it's definitely a challenge I had to overcome early on in my career as a singer and guitarist. Thank you for asking the question, and thank you for being so supportive. I see that you comment on a lot of my videos and all that, so thank you for doing that. All right, second question. Matthew Bell asks, have you ever had a really strong moment of inspiration that shaped you musically? For example, mine was watching the Lingus video by Snarky Puppy for the first time. Yeah, that video is really awesome, and I've also had my share of sort of big inspirational moments watching a lot of videos, actually. When I first started playing drums when I was like 13 or something, I got into Pink Floyd. Like, my friends were huge fans of Pink Floyd, and I'd heard it a little bit, but I grew up listening to Nirvana and the Beatles. That's what my brothers and my parents listened to. So eventually I got into that band thanks to my friends, and I remember watching one of their live DVDs called Pulse, if I remember correctly, and just being absolutely mind blown. Like the end song, which I think is Comfortably Numb, where like the huge balloon comes down and the whole thing in the solo, that was just like, at that point I knew that I wanted to do that for a living, or at least try to be, that awesome. That show was just absolutely mind-blowing. Then a couple years down the line, I started getting into drum DVDs, like instructional DVDs, and this was all pre-YouTube, so you had to go and buy the DVD or find it online. But I remember Mike Portnoy's, what was it called? Mike Portnoy DVDs. Liquid Drum Theater. First time I watched that DVD, I just instantly knew that I wanted to be a drummer, and I didn't even know Dream Theater nor Liquid Tension Experiment. I actually discovered those bands thanks to that DVD, and I went on a whole like progressive rock thing. For years, I just wrote and played progressive rock. That's all I did. Or, first time I saw Foo Fighters live, I was just like, look at this guy. He's a drummer. He also sings and plays guitars and all that. That was really a huge inspiration for me. And I went like 3 years writing songs that exactly sounded like Foo Fighters. I still get inspired almost on a daily basis, either from watching videos or listening to songs or whatever, but those are key moments I know in the past that sort of defined me as a musician. I hope that answers your question. Thanks for asking. All right, next question from Mark Purnell. He goes, hey Pat, I just started to experiment with different instruments. Saz guitar, fretless guitar, oh that's cool, fretless guitar, and different genres, Arabic and Ethiopian music. What are some of the areas where you have experimented that became a boom in your musical acumen and or a bust? Stepping out can be risky, but I believe the rewards are worth it. A bust definitely winds, like I don't play any wind instrument or anything like that, and that's something I'd love to explore in the future, but I tried doing that in high school and it didn't work. I'm more of a sort of stringed instruments or drums or vocals. Those things work, but for some reason winds, I just can't do it. It doesn't work. In terms of what's been successful successful in the past, every time I've picked up a new instrument, that's really opened a bunch of new doors for me creatively, obviously. But like when I was a kid, the first thing I played was the cello. So music for me was sort of the cello. And then eventually I took piano courses, and just that opened so many doors. You get a far better understanding of music and music theory by having the notes literally laid out in front of you. Eventually I started playing guitar, which is a whole different system of playing, with chords, and the fact that the notes aren't, laid out the same way as they would be on a piano keyboard. And after that, I started playing the drums, and that's really when everything sort of blew up. You all of a sudden have an understanding of rhythm and groove and time and all that stuff. And yeah, every time I picked up an instrument, it's really sort of made me more aware of how complex and beautiful and amazing music is. And I love the fact that you're challenging yourself with either fretless guitar or Ethiopian music. I think that's a great suggestion. It makes me want to tackle different musical temperaments and all that. I think that would be a great challenge. But aside from just picking up another instrument and with that getting a broader understanding of music itself, recording my own music and really diving deeper into recording techniques, mixing, mastering, and all that, that's another thing I really don't regret doing. If you've never tried recording your own music or somebody else's, that's really something I recommend doing. I hope that answers your question, and thanks for asking a second question, Mark. I really appreciate it. All right, last question comes from Marc-André Barabé. He goes, I miss you, bro. I don't have a lot of questions, but yeah, maybe. Bad Captain comeback tour, original lineup, or you could do an acoustic version. I really enjoyed Runaway, one of my favorite songs ever. Thank you. You should do videos on how to record homemade. I'm basically looking for tips myself. Love you, man. Peace. Thanks for asking that question, buddy. For other people who have no idea what he's talking about, Bad Captain was my band about 10 years ago, and he was a huge fan of it. We became friends thanks to that. Ever since the band broke up, he's been asking for us to get back together. I don't think that's ever gonna happen, maybe. I mean, it's not impossible, but just the fact that we all live in different cities now might be a little bit harder. I'm not saying it's impossible, I'm just saying it's highly unlikely. But that doesn't mean that I'm 100% done with Bad Captain itself. I'd love to re-release some material or explore some of the songs and break them down here on the channel. It might be something that only you would watch, Mark, but that's good enough for me. Otherwise, I'm not against recording a new Bad Captain album. That's really something I'd like to do down the road, but these days I'm more concentrated on solo stuff and eventually the second Horse Dog album. But with a bit of patience, maybe you'll get a Bad Captain album, even if you're the only guy who's gonna listen to it. That works for me, man. Finally, quickly, basic recording tips. Yes, absolutely. I plan on doing that. I have a whole series of basic stuff that I think I want to do on this channel. I've been sort of brainstorming on how to approach it and all that, either recording at home where I make most of my demos, or when I record here. Those are all things that I want to do this year on YouTube. I want to do a whole basic series on drums for absolute beginners, like from identifying what's a bass drum, what's a cymbal, how do stands work and all that stuff, to setting up, to miking, to recording. But I also want to do a sort of basic home/DIY recording series as well. So that's definitely something you can expect on the channel in the near future. All right, those are the 4 questions I got for this week's Q&A. If you have any more questions, you can ask them in the comment box down below. Thank you guys for asking questions, and most of all, thank you for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.